for everybody out there, this is exclusive. I'm going to be breaking this, oh gosh, probably Wednesday or Thursday. So don't go out and tell everybody that we talked about this in here, okay?
Shh. Okay. Swearing all
right,
of you to
so-
secrecies, NDA right now. There.
So it was made public 2 days ago, I guess, that Universal is going to do a live action How to Train Your Dragon. And the biggest reason that they're doing that, what I have found out, is because they need to differentiate How to Train Your Dragon from Zelda, because they're going to do Zelda. And for them to do Zelda, they don't want to have that directly competing with How to Train Your Dragon. It won't only compete in terms of streaming, in terms of movies and the appearance of it, but also theme parks. And so they need to shift the style of How to Train Your Dragon into something more realistic, so that then Zelda will stand out when they start to do Hyrule stuff. And so these companies tend to not want to compete within their own studios, within their own genres or franchises. You might think of it like an automobile manufacturer. They tend to not want to produce two different types of SUV, because then their SUVs are competing against one another.
Zelda and How to Train Your Dragon are two very different things, though. I mean, why would they think it's compete at all?
Well, so part of what that comes from is that those two properties are inside a genre that within the industry is known as sword and sorcery. And so anything that has to do with fantasy, dragons, etc., they lump all that together, whether we agree with it or not. And so for whatever reason, they've decided that both Zelda and How to Train Your Dragon fit within that. They are particularly keen on Zelda because it is seen as an opportunity for them to do a sword and sorcery property that is pristine. It's not damaged in any way. And you're going to see these companies reaching out to more and more of the Japanese content, because they've determined that the stuff from the West that we've been doing for the last 10, 15 years, that all of that has been sort of sullied by the decisions that were made. Whether or not they take credit for that, whether or not they own up to it, the audiences now view those in a different light, whereas the stuff from Japan really hasn't been blighted at all by sort of our social movements of the day.
Raise your hand if you're hoping Japan tells most of them to just shove off.
They already are. If you look at the way you're looking at the dub companies changing the translations or even subtitles, some actual Japanese anime companies have actually pulled it out of the rights of those of the Western companies, because they've been changing it to agenda rather than the actual dialogue. So yeah, that's already happening. That's why anime, you can have more diverse entertainment in anime or manga than you can with what Western culture is giving us right now. We're like literally looking for a needle in a haystack, because all we're seeing is a bunch of people yelling and screaming at us going, here's your characters.
And Nintendo's going to be very careful too. Nintendo is going to keep a tight grip, but what has happened is that somehow they've managed to convince Nintendo that they're going to have to switch off of the Japanese way of handling decision making, because Western companies and global corporations, they need a 2 to 3 year roadmap so that they can get ready for all of this stuff, so that they can produce all the toys and the merch and everything. And Nintendo is notorious for, if it's not good enough, they'll scrap it at the last minute, start all over. And that doesn't work.
Very strict.
Yeah, that doesn't work if you've got $1 billion, merchandise situation on your hands, in terms of, all the toys, all the T-shirts, et cetera, all the planning that goes into putting these into big box retailers. Nintendo can't just pull the plug right at the last minute like they can with a game.
I do have a question. Sorry.
No, just real quick, Stephen, hold that thought real quick. Let me throw this on the table. I had to step out for a second. As far as, and it occurred to me after our last conversation on that Pro regarding doing Zelda as keeping that animated, going live action with How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah, they're definitely doing that now.
They're basically looking like they're going to launch these things, or at least get them into production around the same time. That would be an animation studio. And then that would be a live action.
I think Zelda's about a year or 2 years behind, but yes, I agree with you.
Let me ask you this, though, and this is my thought. As much as I would love to see a live action Zelda from a business side in Warner, I understand wanting to keep it animated. Why? Because if I go live action with Zelda, then that would likely preclude me from ever having a crossover universe with Mario because you've
Yeah.
already gone into animation there. So if you
Well-
keep Zelda as an animated feature and Mario, you keep the specter of being able to create an NCU, a Nintendo Cinematic Universe that would collide, just doing it on an animated scale instead of live action.
Well, the other thing is that if you
And
do a live action Zelda, then it's very difficult to do like a spin-off show that you could throw onto streaming. Whereas
Right.
you can just lower the production value on the CGI thing and roll with it if Nintendo will let you.
Now,
Steven?
Another advantage.
there was a question I wanted to actually is related to this though. With
Go
the release of the Metroid remastered, right? Do you think it in a way that's Nintendo also testing the waters to see whether or not the fan base is big enough for a Metroid animated film down the line? Because that's what
Yes.
I first thought.
Yes.
I think the NCU is very big, and I think there's a lot of work going into it behind the scenes right now.
But Samus was
How
fun.
easily can you bring in and satisfy, okay, wokey wokes, we have the OG female badass superhero video game character, Samus Aran. Here you go. That's what I would do. I'd absolutely bring her in. Why
Well,
not?
the Wokey Wokes are going to claim that Kirby is non-binary, so they'll be happy.
I mean, Samus Aran was inspired by anybody? Y'all know when they made the game?
I'm assuming from Aliens, right?
Ellen Ripley.
Yeah.
Yep. Sigourney Weaver. That's it. Why wouldn't you bring her in if you're Nintendo? That's a money machine. Especially
Played
as
by
an
Jennifer
animated
Lawrence.
feature.